This week, I'll bring you along with me on my EV road trip to discover the trials of EV charging at hotels. Spoiler, they run out of chargers faster than their continental breakfast runs out of the chocolate croissants. Not my fault, by the way.
That sounds very specific. The city of Denver has an e-bike voucher program to subsidize the cost of an electric bike. The most recent release of vouchers were snapped up faster than Taylor Swift tickets. Those who failed to get a voucher were very disappointed, as was Ticketmaster, who are very angry they're somehow not making money off all this.
Brian, your cotton t-shirt uses more water to grow the cotton than you will ever use to... Okay, of course you're not wearing a t-shirt today. The one time you're not wearing a t-shirt. But if you were wearing
it is cotton.
Okay. Well, your cotton shirt will use more water to grow that cotton than you'll ever use to wash it in its long life as a t-shirt. Fortunately, entrepreneurs are working to change that. Now, if they'd only get a houseplant that didn't require water, my house wouldn't be so beige.
A resident of Houston used an Apple AirTag to track where her plastic recycling was going. Like a family pet that has to be put down, her plastic has gone upstate to live out the rest of its days at an idyllic family farm.
All that and more on this edition of The Clean Energy Show. And Brian, I'm going to talk a bit before we get to you, okay? Because it's
Sure.
It's September. We're kicking off a new season. I also want to say that this is your last chance, listeners, if you want to tell us what we will put in our Patreon, which we've talked about for years. It's finally coming one of these days sooner than later. And if you have something that you like as a perk for donating to the show that we want to give back to the people who donate something, valuable for them, that's important. And maybe give to other podcasts or other content creators and you like certain perks, well, drop us an email, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Now, I just got back from a trip, and Brian, it rained a lot in the spring here, and I had trouble getting my pool going because there was algae in it, and I couldn't get in the pool to scrub the algae because it was too cold, and my chemistry in my pool went berserk, and then it didn't rain all summer. And then just before I left for my trip, it rained a bit, maybe a half an inch, maybe a centimeter, not much. And then the chemistry went wacky again. And I know that rain is acidic and it will lower the pH of your pool. But this was just a little bit of rain, and I'm worried that it's from the industrial processes around here, the steel mill and especially the refinery, that I, and perhaps even you, sir, are getting worse rain than you should be getting on your property, on your vegetables and things like that.
Yeesh,
I don't know, though.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, that's sad news. It reminds me a bit of when I used to have a backyard ice rink. When we first bought this house, it's got a fairly large yard. So, this is Canada. It's a pretty cold winter. And I would do an outdoor ice rink in the backyard. But every winter was different. Like some winters, I was out there shoveling the snow off it like every 2 days, and it seemed like I just shoveled all winter and we skated for 2 days. So have you even swum in your pool this year?
That's a sad question. Yes, I have. And I felt like I've got enough of it, because I didn't say, well, I wanted to leave because I had other interests in my life. So, but yeah, I did soak a lot in it. And my family, though, my daughter only swam once, but she's like that. My son did come in a few times, and my partner a few more times. But she's sort of injured. She has a mechanical injury with her arm and shoulder, and she couldn't use this tether I bought last year for exercise. Holds you in place and stretches, and she actually liked it.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't thought, oh, there goes $35, but she actually liked it. So I don't know about that. It kind of scares me. I want to talk about a better route planner because you, sir, are a Tesla owner, a multi-Tesla owner, and you've got it made. You don't have to worry about things. But us in the non-Tesla world, we have trouble on vacations knowing about, how far we can go.
Yeah, and especially around here in the prairies of Canada where there's large distances, not that many chargers, it won't necessarily be this bad where you live.
Hopefully not, but it was, anyway, it's okay. So it's an app that plans your route, right? You plan your route. You say, I want to go to city X and I want to leave today. and under the terrain, it knows the terrain, the ups and the downs. It knows the temperature, which affects range. It knows the wind and the forecast wind. And that's in the paid version. So before I paid for it again, I used the non-paid version, and there was a big difference, right? There was a big difference. So you need to use the paid version, which is €5 a month, which works out to $7 Canadian, $6 American, something like that. But if you're traveling, oh, it's worth it. Like, it completely takes, like, I have less range anxiety than I do in a gas car, because I know your gas car doesn't say you have 3% left. It says you have this much left, and it can vary quite, it's not looking at the weather. Your gas car is just looking at what it's using at the moment in time. It was rock solid, Brian. Rock solid. I mean,
Nice.
I think maybe once it was off 1%, but that's nothing. That's like 6 kilometers or something, or, it's nothing. It's 4 kilometers even. And that's because my son drove a little faster than I told the app that I was going to drive. So it knew everything, and it was perfect. So what I do with this app is, in my particular case, I have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, whatever you use. And it can show it right on the car screen. The app projects to the car screen from your phone, and it actually uses up a lot of power, and your phone gets warm because it's constantly running. And I think it uses Google Maps too, so it's a navigation system essentially when you're driving. And in the corner of the screen, it tells you your current percentage of battery and the battery percentage of your destination. I lowered it to 6% because of this app, because I got confident. But it used to be like 10, 11%. But now that I'm so confident in it, I've been able to lower that. And even though the car flashes at me saying, charge battery soon, and beeps, and it's scary at first, but no range anxiety whatsoever on this trip. Nothing. I'd done it before last year, so I got confident in where the chargers are and how they worked and such. But I'll talk more about that later. But I just wanted to say that a better route planner, if you're in a non-EV, what you need to do is buy like it's 20 US, $30 Canadian, a Bluetooth low energy dongle. You can find it. Basically, it's the one that everyone buys. It's at the top of the search. As long as it's Bluetooth low energy, it will work with the app. Usually on most cars, you can check it out, because a better road planner was started in Europe, but Rivian bought it, so now it seems just the same as it ever was. And they've tested it with different cars, and they take in data with different cars. So if your car is brand new, and say you're driving a Chevy Equinox, it's only a few of them around, and they're not going to have as good a data on that. But the Bolt's been around for a long time, and it will improve, drastically the more people use these things. But holy cow, it was rock solid. Our first stop, like I said, I did the Stockton method. I didn't go all the way to my destination on the first day. I took it easy, and it was a great idea, Brian. A great idea to do it that way.
Yeah.
Totally stress-free. And we only, charged twice. So we didn't have to even charge the second time. But yeah, I said, well, we'll make a little vacation at Dinosaur Provincial Park, because my relatives have been nagging me to go there. They say, oh, it's totally different than anything in Canada. It's like, there's rattlesnakes and black widow spiders, and it's a completely different landscape. It is. It's almost Grand Canyon-y. I mean, it's quite. Have you been there?
No, I haven't.
Well, I know you're not a nature guy. You're more of like an architecture city guy, but this is pretty spectacular. Considering it's free, it's 40 kilometers off the highway that you're going on, and so we stopped in Brooks, Alberta, where there was not only a Gideon's Bible, but an oil book in the bedside drawer. So
in the hotel room, yeah.
Yeah. And we stayed there the way back, too. So that was, I don't know what to make of that. But anyway, and when I got to Dinosaur Provincial Park, you stop at a lookout over the canyon, or Badlands. Not really a canyon, technically, but it seems like a canyon. And it's vast, and it was so quiet. It was so quiet that it was deafening, that we were whispering to each other, because there was other people, 100 yards away, and we felt like it was yelling. So I have a clip. I'm not used to silence. I live near 2 freeways, a highway, and an industrial plant that I can actually hear, which doesn't make sense, the refinery in Regina. But this was absolute silence. The silence is actually deafening. Whispering sounds loud. I mean, we could record the podcast there, and it would be much better conditions than here.
Yeah.
but I was really, really struck by that. And of course, the reason for our trip was a wedding of my niece, Rebecca, and her fiance, now husband, Tyler. And it was supposed to be a small wedding, but it was average size, as they all turn out to be, because you can't offend people. And it was planned meticulously. She's a human justice graduate, honors graduate recently, and somehow they spent a lot of money on this wedding, had it planned to a T, and guess what happened? What happened is something that you and I have been talking about a lot on the podcast lately, and that is power outages. The power got cut.
Oh.
I loved it. As an old man, I couldn't have a conversation with anyone during the dance, right? Because they do the speeches, you finish the dessert, and boom, it's dance time. And the old people, which I'm now officially part of, along with my 80-year-old, uncle, we couldn't have a conversation. So it was great. I mean, I don't think the bride liked it because she's meticulous about that. And it wasn't as planned. And, me, I would have loved something like that if I had a wedding, because it opens up spontaneity and new things. And but something weird happened. I'll play this clip for you. People started singing the American national anthem for no reason because they had no music. I don't think young people today can party without music. At campgrounds, I'm not sure they would have sung it that way in Saskatchewan or other places, but somehow in Alberta, the American national anthem was what came to mind. Star Spangled Banner. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. It was weird, but I loved it, and it was great.
Well, and last week, our podcast, we recorded late because I had a planned power outage here at my house, and it was supposed to be done at 3 p.m. Went from like about 9 until 6, which is, the whole day. And so, yeah, we lived our lives differently that day, and we sat on the porch more, and we just enjoyed the outdoors.
Just
and,
old-time pioneers.
Yeah. So, and yet somehow when the power comes back on, you just immediately
instantly
go back.
There was a case with the kids when we had a power outage here. I was talking about it. They all ran out into the fields in the park behind the house. And as soon as the street lights perked up, they ran as fast as their little feet could take them back to the house. And they could not wait. I thought they were having such a great time they would ignore it. No. It's an addiction.
Yeah, and when my kids were younger, we used to do that Earth Day thing where you shut off your power for an hour and you just you light a candle and
my kids
and
were
it was
never thrilled
lovely.
with that. I loved it.
No.
I've always determined to have an Earth Day party, but now I can just have a solar party because it's powered by solar. I don't have to, I got solar panels on the roof.
Yeah,
I don't have to shut off the power necessarily to have clean fun.
No, and pretty soon we'll all have battery backups and we won't have the fun of a power. And we won't have the fun of a power outage anymore. But yeah, speaking of that technology, I asked you last week about robot vacuum cleaners because, it's something we've been thinking about. And anyway, we ordered one. It's coming on Friday. We got the Robo-Rock model. There was a really flash sale on Amazon. It was really good price. So we don't know how it works yet, but I ended up going down a bit of a YouTube rabbit hole.
New York Times technical reviews? You did, eh?
It was the Wirecutter's top pick, so always a good idea to go to the Wirecutter for this kind of advice. But ended up on YouTube as well, and there's a channel called The Hookup, and I mentioned them before because this is the guy who did the elaborate light bulb testing.
Right.
Yeah, this guy, it's like he does a better job than Consumer Reports, and he's just like one guy working out of his own house. So like when he does these vacuum cleaner tests, so he tests all the robot vacuum cleaners, he does it all in his own house. And I don't know if it drives his family crazy or not, or if they're gone during the day while he does it. But,
I'm sure the money is worthwhile, though, from a successful YouTube channel like that.
Yeah, no, he's doing well. He's got a few 100,000 subscribers. So, this is still kind of new technology, so it's changing a lot. The newest thing is the mop ones now. Like they have ones that can do wet mopping, and it's still early days for those. So there's only a couple that this guy recommends on the Hookup. There's a couple that have a self-cleaning roller, so the mop is on a roller, and it cleans its own mop while it's going around the floor. And so that one does the best job. But the thing that surprised me is that these wet ones, you can hook them up to your plumbing, and it essentially works like your dishwasher. So it can fill the water for the mopping and then empty the water for the mopping at its base station.
I'm sorry, that is very freaking cool.
Yeah.
Daddy want. I want that now. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And so it is a little bit sometimes difficult because you have to retrofit it into either under your kitchen sink, or some of them you can actually hook up to your toilet plumbing. Often your toilet plumbing is more accessible. Like if you have a valve.
I've got a bidet I've hooked up, so yeah, I can confirm that.
So it can actually empty into your toilet if you want it to, if you want to set it up that way. But it made me think, so we are still planning to build a cottage next year. We haven't talked about that for a long time, but I'm planning to build an eco-friendly cottage out at our lake property, and it's still going to be rammed earth is what we're planning.
Really?
But, yeah, that's the plan.
Where are you going to get builders to build rammed earth from? Another planet?
Our architect is going to do the rammed earth part himself.
What?
And then
How does an architect come out and do a rammed earth? How does an architect do anything?
Yeah, well, he went to BC and did a workshop with the leaders in this kind of rammed earth technology. And that's on an old episode. We won't get into it too much here, but you take dirt and a little bit of Portland cement and a little bit of sand and clay, and you basically pound it into a wall, and it's a nice way to make it. But
that would be very exciting. I would love to see that because, I have never seen one anywhere.
Yeah.
For you to have one would be very cool. I mean, literally cool, too, because it would keep the place cool. One of the things I've struggled with when I've stayed a few days at your cottage is that it was always during a heat wave. And there's, James roasted like a chicken in an oven. A couple of the times that I was there. So it would be nice. I would keep the place cool and also warm. You could go there in the winter months and it would retain the heat well, right? And store heat. It would store cool from the night in the summer, and it would keep a more even flow of temperature because there's lots of cement involved.
Yeah, and it's its own vapor barrier as well. Like it's different than cement in that it can absorb and release moisture as well. It can absorb and release heat as well as absorb and release moisture. It's a bit more of a breathing wall rather than cement. But anyway, it occurred to me as we design and build this new cottage, we should absolutely put a robot mop vacuum station in it so we don't have to retrofit it to something else.
Well, there you go. I wonder what else a person should be thinking about. It makes you wonder, like, is there other things I should be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely going to do smart lights, but then probably also put in, video cameras and stuff so we can monitor it when we're not away.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So hopefully that will get built next summer, and we will.
You should have one on the
updates.
Exterior as well, so you can see if any trees fell during the storm. I mean, I would.
Yes. No, and we're going to talk a little bit about, robot lawnmowers as well, which is the other thing we're considering. That's coming up later.
Well, I love robots. Can't get enough of them. Very cool. Well, I wanted to talk about my trip to Calgary a little bit. I will also, get into how my hotel charging worked later in the show. I talked to my brother-in-law, Doug, who is working at he's mostly retired, but he's always got different gigs. Every time I talk to him, he's doing something different. Last time he was selling Mercedes on Saturdays. Now he's selling Lexuses on Saturdays. And he said, "Yo, James, Lexus isn't into Toyota. They're not doing EVs. They're not." Well, he knew that. He got that from the job. Well, I told him that Lexus did sell an EV and showed him a picture, and he was kind of blown away by that, I think. And then I assumed his dealership sold it. They do not. That is not mentioned on their website. However, the same group of companies, sometimes dealerships have one, owner for Hyundai and Lexus and everything else, all the different brands. Well, they do, and they have their other brands do have EV chargers there. So I thought that was weird. And by the way, in Brooks, Alberta, there was a place, a dealer. I found that the big difference between this year and last year in EV charging here on the Canadian prairies, at least, is that dealerships have chargers and a lot of them don't let you use them. Well, I was kind of curious about Brooks because there's only one real charger there, and if I planned my stay to go there, this small city, and that charger wasn't working, I'd be kind of screwed because it's the hotel charger as well. And the dealership there blocks off their charger. They've got a Flow charger, my favorite brand, and they put 2 pickup trucks kind of very purposely blocking it. Very obviously they was blocking it, but I snuck in behind it, tested it at night, and it worked, and it was free. Because other people have said it was free. Works fine. It's free. They just don't want people using it. Why would you pay all that money for a charger and not use it? You could, it makes no sense to me. They could be recouping the cost of it by letting people charge there. It's one parking stall behind everything else. And it's like perfectly able to, I know they want to charge their own vehicles. You know, that's kind of the purpose of it, but it makes no sense to me. Yeah, that's really all I have to say. Other than that, there's lots of EVs in Calgary now. Last year, I didn't see hardly any until you crossed into the mountains. Lots of EVs, a lot. And I saw one car completely pelted by large hail. Looked like larger than golf ball size hail. It had dimples in it all over, huge dimples. So they've got a hail problem there. And that's just one thing I noticed.
Yeah, we get hail here, but it's always been tiny. I've never really had a problem with the hail here. I don't know, different weather systems. Okay, so on to Denver. We talk occasionally about e-bike rebate programs. There's certain cities, municipalities, states, countries that are encouraging people to buy and purchase e-bikes. So Denver, they had one of the first in the country. And this story is from Electrek, and they're saying that the program is a bit of a victim of its own success. People love the program, and they offer new vouchers for the program. These are rebates to get money off of an e-bike, and they release new vouchers every once in a while, and they're, getting snapped up quicker and quicker. So the rebates start at $300 for a standard electric bike, up to $500 for a cargo e-bike, and larger rebates for lower income residents. So if you're low income, you can get more. So up to $1,400 off the price of an electric bike, which is obviously quite spectacular. So they had another batch of 220 vouchers, but 17,000 people logged in at the precise time to try and get one. And in about a minute, they were out of these vouchers.
If that was me and I didn't already have an e-bike and I had a use for them like many people do, I would have had the entire family, extended family, and any friend who was willing to help all trying to get me that voucher. And it's probably what people did, right?
Yeah. It's like, getting the whole, if you're trying to buy tickets for a concert or something, you get more than one computer going and hope that it's worked. But anyway, this has been a big success in Denver, other than not having enough of them. But it's such a success that the bicycle infrastructure is getting a little bit overcrowded, they say. So there's been an influx of, obviously, new e-bike riders, and that's put stress on the local streets and forced the city to now accelerate its progressing plans to roll out more bike lanes and safer bike routes. So, one thing fuels the other. And, most cities should work hard on improving their bike infrastructure, whether there's a program or not.
Absolutely. And I'm a big fan, and it's something that's relatively new to me because we don't have it here. My son, of course, is into that sort of thing. That's what he wants to do for a living in his life. So we talk about it, and what we have here is really crappy. I really like watching YouTube videos about this. This is something that I sometimes get into on a bit of a rabbit hole. Yeah. But I love it. And of course, they need to be separated from traffic. We talked about this before on the show. There can't just be a stick sticking up from the ground preventing you between you and cars. There can be either parked cars or a whole green space. It has to be something. And they can do it in existing spaces if they really want to.
Well, here in our city, we have an area called the Cathedral area, which is a nice sort of walkable neighborhood with lots of interesting shops and stores and stuff. And they recently tried to slow down the traffic. Like they lowered the speed limit, and they put in these sort of balustrades to kind of, slow down the traffic, force everything to kind of one lane. But I don't know why it's not a bike lane. Like if you're on a bike,
that's why I told my son was happy with this, and I said, no, that should be a whole thing. It should be a pedestrian area with trees, and then a bike lane, and then a little bit of access of cars in certain places so you can go park for groceries or something.
Yeah.
Get close to the stores in winter. But other than that, it's kind of, and Dooney, there's another street that they're doing where all the bars are. It's a little disappointing, a little under ambitious for me.
Yeah, they could have just shut down the whole street and made it a pedestrian thing, or at very least, bike lanes, because right now the bikes now have to ride around these balustrades into the middle of traffic. It's very weird.
I don't like that.
It's not ideal. But then, of course, the other thing is 5 months out of the year, it's bitterly cold here, and I don't want to cycle for about 5 months of the year.
Right. That is true. And, you know, the town of Banff, Alberta, one of the most beautiful towns in the world, is nestled in very scenic mountains. During COVID, they shut down their main street, which is kind of at the edge of town where everything is. They opened it today. It's opening today, my son says, again. And because I think there was a city council vote that was slightly in favor of it. But it was hell. It was impossible. And there was more people than cars, because the cars were congested, so they couldn't move. The people could move, and it's very crowded. It's screaming to be a pedestrian only with bike lanes. It's just silly that way.
I was there when it was blocked off for just pedestrians, and it was fantastic. You know? And the other thing, too, they are working on improving the rail service to Banff. So there's going to be a better rail line from Calgary to Banff because, everyone just ends up driving there. It's not a big place, too many cars.
People fly in from around the world. They rent cars in Calgary because you can see they're all rental cars. 90% of the cars there are rental. And the relative I was just talking about, his brother lives there, and he's lived there for his whole life. He hates it now. It says it's so crowded, and then the tourists are so rude. And but of course he wouldn't live if there wasn't for tourists. If it was just a small town, it would hardly be sustainable. It's the tourism that makes the money flow. That's very interesting and a little bit surprising for me. And also, speaking of the same thing, I went out into Kananaskis country. Are you familiar with that?
Which is fantastic. It's like Banff, but less crowded and even more beautiful.
Well, here's the thing, Brian. During COVID, it became very crowded, too crowded. And it was up like 43% of their usual traffic. So what did they do? They put a $15 fine or a $15 fee per day, which went from free to $15, which is almost national park level, per car. Yeah. And we went there, but we didn't go to the normal place. We sort of drove in from the side to a road that just dead ended in there. We just said, well, if we've got enough time and enough range, we'll just hit the mountain so we can say that we were there and have a little bit of nature for the afternoon. And then I see a sign that says you have to buy this pass online. We didn't read the whole sign, but we saw that. And then there was no cell service the whole time, so we were screwed. So I'm sitting in the parking lot resting as my family straggles back to the car, and the park ranger and pass enforcement guy pulls up. So I'm pooping myself, and I don't know what to do. But fortunately, they came in a few minutes, and I don't know where he went. He went to the bathroom or something, or was tied up with other cars, but we didn't get a fine. I don't know how much the fine is. I never did find that out. But yeah, now I know. I didn't know because I've been to the Kananaskis many times, and it was lovely. And I talked to a guy at an EV charger who owns a Kona EV, I believe. Yeah, Kona. But he wasn't driving it. He was driving a camper van. He says, I only drive my Kona in short distances in Alberta. It's got about the same range as my car. Charges a bit faster. And I said, I love doing this, and it's great. And he says, he was talking about all the places he charges for free at, and one was Kananaskis. So there's some free charging there.
Well, in our road trip to Indiana, there was at least one highway that was a toll highway, but there was a sign like just log into this website and pay online so you don't have to stop for a toll booth or something. Anyway, we always meant to do it. Oh, yeah, we got to go online and pay for that. We never did. And, I don't know. We never got a bill or anything.
Yeah. I crossed the Golden Gate Bridge without doing that. I never got a bill. I expected to. But anyway, maybe it's because I was from a foreign country. Well, let's talk a little bit about my trip. I wanted to fill in people. There's a lot of people who listen to our show who are EV curious, who are intending to get EVs, or maybe have new EVs and haven't done a lot of travel with them. And, I started off with, I told you this was going to be the worst possible weather for this trip. And it's something I've worried about because I've known about the trip for almost 18 months. I've known it for a long time, and I wonder what the weather would be like, how my EV journey would be. And it was a low pressure system, and it was windy. It was a 50-kilometer headwind, gust, and rain, which doesn't help. That slows you down too in a gas car. All that works against you. But we didn't get too far, and the skies cleared, and they never turned back. It was hot and sunny. It was windy for our trip there, so I did need extra charging. But no range anxiety, none, because I knew. I knew if you can count on something rock solid, if something is like a god and you know that it's right, then it's not an issue. So I've less, like I said, less range anxiety than I would in a car. I tried to charge at plug and charge places, which is Flow. Flow allows me to plug in and not worry about it. It takes 40 seconds. The first hiccup was in Maple Creek, where I actually probably, I had to charge because of the wind, an extra little charge, and it's about 4 minutes off the highway, so like, 10-minute extra to the trip. And it made me log in again. I did everything I could. I got the app up and running, made sure there was funds in it because it was a different branded charger. It was Co-op. And everybody said, use the Shell app. It works better than the Co-op app because it's the same company. Like they're using the same technology, Shell Recharge and Co-op out here. So I used the Shell app, and it made me log in again, even though I'd already logged in. And I had all these different passwords that I didn't remember. And it said, we're going to lock you out for 30 minutes if you don't get it right this time. So I moved to the Co-op app, and I went back and I saw, like I think I had to send an email to get my password reset, because I couldn't remember it. My phone wouldn't let my phone remember it. I hate apps that do that, but it is costing money. It is billing me for doing it. Finally got in, and it worked, and it was just, I hate it. I really like plug and charge. Everybody should have plug and charge like Tesla and like Flow does with GM vehicles. Flow is a great network, by the way. They're all up and they're all working in perfect condition. And they're a Canadian company from Quebec. And Flow, if you're listening, I love you. You're fantastic, and that helps a lot. Yeah, and as far as the Better Route Planner app goes, it changed its mind about me having to stop in Moose Jaw. It says, you don't have to stop anymore. Save 10 minutes by not stopping. I said, okay. So, yeah,
nice.
That's it. It updated to the better for that trip. So I stayed at the Element Hotel, Calgary Airport in Calgary. It's a nice hotel. I got a deal on it. It was like a Google search, and they gave me like 40% off. It was better than the hotel I normally stay at. But there's hardly any hotels at all in Calgary. This is one of like 2 or 3. And so, they've got 3 EV chargers. I didn't know that till I got there. And they were, there was one available because we got there in the afternoon. And then I noticed it charged fast. This is new to me, Brian. I've never charged that fast at a hotel before or anywhere that wasn't a fast charger. This was giving me a sweet 10 or 11 kilowatts of juice, which is, like 100 kilometers in an hour or so. And that is pretty significant. Unlike at other level 2 chargers, you don't see that big of a bump where you can actually plan a trip to Kananaskis with an hour and a half of charging or something like that, and that was great. So they were all Sun Country highway chargers. Now, when we left a couple of hours later to do our touristy supper and look around thing, there was a VW Golf, e-Golf beside us. They're defunct now, but they had electric Golfs, and it had its charge door open. So I when I unplugged our car, I plugged it into them because they were in a non-EV space, but close enough to the cord. All the cords are very long, and I plugged them in. And then I got back, and there was no charges available, and he was done charging, but I couldn't unplug him because he had his charger door locked. Like the charge wouldn't let go of it. And I didn't want to go mess with the Teslas. I wasn't sure when the Tesla was charging or not. I noticed from the EW Golf because I plugged it in and the charge port flashed green, so that's how you knew it was charging. and then it stopped flashing, so it was charged, and I could tell on the charger it wasn't taking it, but I didn't want to mess with the Teslas. My daughter had already set off the Tesla, what is it, Sentry mode, so she's on
Sentry
tape,
mode, yeah.
on recorded tweet something. So I didn't want to do that, but that was kind of frustrating, so I didn't get a charge.
So you assumed because the port was open for his charger that he was waiting for a charge.
Yeah, and then the next day I did that when I didn't have a charger and someone plugged me in. Brian, humanity is good.
Nice.
Big lesson here. And also, I hadn't thought of all this before. I learned it from someone else. Park nearby, put your charge port door open, and it'll be fine. Now, at my Brooks Hotel, it's kind of weird. This was in a parking garage, and there was six EVs always wanting to charge on 3 chargers. So we need more chargers. We need more hotels. It has to be regulated that they have chargers. Some of the chains are going in that direction, so they will be rolling out. But it's got to improve because all the EV drivers are going there. I normally wouldn't go there because it's above my price range, but most people who can afford EVs can afford a half-decent hotel like that. But I had found another one, but it only had 1 charger, so it was kind of a crapshoot. Anyway, pretty happy about it, but the other hotel had a fast charger and a level 2 charger outside that's weird. So everybody in the world is using that fast charger, not just hotel guests. But I charged on level 2, but it cost me just as much to charge overnight on level 2 there as it would to fast charge. So, but fast charging to 100% is kind of tricky, which you want to do. So somebody there parked in such a way overnight on the fast charger in a Tesla that somebody else could unplug him and continue the charging. However, to his disadvantage, no one did that, and he would have got billed 40 cents a minute all night long whenever he got there.
Right, yeah, there can be an idling fee for that.
It's 40 cents regardless on that charge, if charging or not charging. Just like it's $2.50 an hour for the level 2. So that was interesting. So yeah, 100 amp. So that's great. That's better than I have at home. I've got like 7.5 at home, and that was up to 11. My car can take 11.5 or something like that. A lot of cars do. Yeah, so I don't know. The hotel staff knew about it. I always mention to your hotel staff that you're there for the EV charging, so that gets filtered up the chain, and they know. But, she said, well, we've got other guests charging too. It's first come, first serve. And I thought, oh, geez. And that's exactly the situation that it was. So, yeah, it's all good, though. I'm very happy with the whole thing. Even though I didn't get the charge all night like you hoped to, I still got enough to go to Kananaskis because somebody plugged me in for a couple of hours. I mean, that's fantastic. And I'm never completely dead either, right?
Yeah, I've always had good luck at hotel chargers. We tend to arrive early, so yeah, it's usually first come, first serve. So I'm always nervous that something's not going to work out. But I think, maybe once or twice we haven't gotten a charger. But in a Tesla, there's usually a supercharger nearby if you don't get the hotel charge.
Yeah, and, I think it's something I want to keep doing is charging at hotels like that. And I'm hoping that more hotels get on board with that, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's definitely coming. All right, time to dip into the mailbag. All right, a couple of letters here. First one is from Tiernan. Hey, Brian and James, much love to the podcast as always. Are there any other podcasts you all source from or would recommend listening to in conjunction with yours if I wanted to take a deeper dive into, say, the core concept technology, battery chemistry, economics of supply chain, etc., of the energy transition? Also, last I messaged you, I was laid off. Happy to announce I'm now employed in a very different field. I was a process engineer, R&D scientist for a composite flooring manufacturer here in the United States, now employed as a senior procurement manager for a company that makes modular tiny green homes. And I look forward to helping them on their journey to minimize climate impact along the entire journey from sourcing to construction and delivery. Yes, that's from Tiernan. Thanks for writing.
Yeah, Tiernan made a big donation to the show and then promptly got laid off, so I felt bad. But I also know that listeners to our show are very smart and well-educated people, and they would find another job, and she did, and I'm very happy that happened. And it's also very interesting what she's doing. She's working for a company making small homes. I did some research on this, and here's my thinking. A lot of what is mentioned in the email is that, battery supply chain and how is that all happening? The fact is, it's happening in China the most, and the best, and the most, they're lowering the prices and taking over the whole supply chain there. And I don't know that I've heard much in the way of a podcast. There certainly isn't you might find a guest on a podcast from time to time if you search through your podcast app, and, might find an expert where that particular episode talks about it. And I will keep this in mind and bring it up when I come across stuff like that. But as far as non-podcasts go, I use the CN EV Post, which is China EV Post. It's kind of a news blog. It's well written. It's very professional and very connected. So that's my sort of window into China. Also, I'm finding that financial journalism is what covers this stuff the most. Like Bloomberg is a financial journalism paper organization. Who else? Like any of the other ones, like Wall Street Journal, and sometimes covers it and things like that, and the Financial Times or Financial Post, not the Financial Post, Financial Times. And yeah, occasionally guests on podcasts happen, but I'll get back to you. And listeners, of course, you can chime in if you have any ideas on this, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com.
Yeah, and I know you look for other podcasts, and you've suggested some, and usually I listen to 1 or 2 episodes, but, my podcast feed is full, and I haven't found another clean energy show that I like as much as this one. And spending an hour a week
talking about the things we talk about
is enough for me.
Yeah. Occasionally I do, and I subscribe to a lot, and I only listen to episodes where I'm interested, because it gets to be very into the weeds on some of them. A lot of them are for policymakers. A lot of these episodes in this area are made for people who are doing policy, who are working in the industry as a leader in it. So, yeah. Anyway, well, thanks for the letter, Tiernan. James, I'm going to write this. This is Jeff. Jeff has written this as well. I think Jeff is local. Hello, James and Brian. I'm just listening to your podcast and got a kick out of your discussion about robot vacuums and thought I should share my experience with my robot lawnmower. I had really grown tired of arriving at our cottage to find that I needed to spend the next few hours mowing my lawn and spewing exhaust and noise pollution when all I really wanted to do was relax. You were talking about this, that your dad used to drive out every Wednesday to the cottage, 2 hours there, stay overnight after he mowed the lawn, and come back and work a full day.
Yeah, if he could work it out, he would do it on the weekend when we were out there, but every once in a while it's like, well, we want to have fun on the weekend. So he would literally drive out on a Wednesday just to mow the lawn and drive back. It always seemed contradictory to the idea of having a cottage property, like Jeff says. You want to go out there and relax. This is not a work camp.
How long does it take to mow that lawn out there? I'm thinking a while.
Oh, yeah, a couple of hours. And there was a time there when the water level of the lake was really down. So it's a lakefront lot, but the lawn just kept growing because the lake was farther and farther away. And it wasn't technically our property. Like our property ends way before the lake. It's a public waterfront, but my dad just kept mowing it further and further and further. So there was basically like a football field that he was mowing at one point.
Wow. Okay, I'll continue with the letter here. It says, in short, I pulled the plug earlier this spring, and I haven't started my lawnmower at the lake since. My lawnmower has never looked better. He has noticed some of his neighbors had small robot lawnmowers. Oh, really? The neighbors, this is taken off then. Mowing their lawns autonomously. This is without people there. I love this. This is, you think of robots just doing the job, but you're not even in the area. You're at home doing your thing and not worrying about your cottage. And this stinking robot is going and charging itself and mowing your lawn for you. Yeah, he noticed his neighbors doing it, so he investigated and he pulled the plug in the spring, and his lawn has never looked better. This small electric mower goes out every day, I didn't know that part, for a number of hours and takes a small cut off each time it's out. It's a razor blade, typically 1 to 2 millimeters off, which is nothing. Those clippings, basically how much it grows every day, those clippings fall in my lawn and serve as fertilizer. when I do this, Brian, when I mulch, it's probably like a foot long because I don't get to my lawn that well, and that's how it works. But, oh, if I had a robot, that would be nice. It'd be much better than children. The frequency of the mowing doesn't allow weeds to take hold, so I've not even noticed needed weed control. And when it's done for the day, it simply returns to the charging station to stand by until the next day. I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords, he writes. P.S. The attached video was a surprise function that I discovered accidentally. It mowed crop circles in a spiral function. When the robot detects that grass is unusually long, it will default to a spiral pattern to ensure that it provides good coverage of the area to be mowed. I enjoy the show. Keep up the great work, Jeff. And I got back to Jeff and asked him, because you wondered about, you always have falling branches on your lot, right?
Yeah, so this is maybe the goal. Ultimately, if we build a new cottage, we'll probably get a robot lawnmower. But that was the concern because there's lots of trees around. So there's always branches of different sizes falling on the lot. So, would a robot lawnmower really work when we're not there to pick up the branches? But you asked Jeff about that.
Yeah, and he says it just goes over the sticks, which is great. Soon they'll have a robot that has a little arm that comes out and picks them up and mulches it into fertilizer for you or something, and then mops your floor. Too bad you didn't have a combo. Then it goes into your house through a little dog door and washes your floors. You'd never have to worry about dust accumulating at your cottage while you're away.
Yeah. So if it's smaller branches, it sounds like it'll just go over top of them. There are larger ones that fall occasionally, and I'm assuming that if it's a huge, tree branch, that it would have to just drive around it.
It'd be an object. He says it doesn't get stuck except occasionally on the perimeter, and then it'll notify you.
Yeah.
Or you can have it notify a neighbor who's maybe, you have neighbors who live out there year round. It will get, and you're pretty friendly, and they would notify them, say, hey, go unstuck Brian's lawnmower, and, you buy him a bottle of wine every year, and he's happy, or whatever.
I would feel kind of embarrassed to ask somebody to do that, but who knows? Oh, and the other thing about the robot vacuum cleaners, a lot of times now they can detect pet poop in your house, because you don't want your robot vacuum going over if your pet has a accident on your floor. So the good ones, the newer ones, can detect the pet poop and just drive around it.
Well, that's good. Hadn't thought of that. Maybe they'll develop one that does clean it up. That would be good as well. Wow, that was a great letter, and 2 great letters this week. Thank you so much for taking the time to write us. We really appreciate you when you do that. Contact us by email, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, and you can leave us a voicemail also, which we love even more. Speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. We love to hear the sound of our listeners. Our podcast runs on support from you. You can donate one time or on a monthly basis, and our PayPal link and Patreon coming soon. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Next story is from Apple Insider. So Apple came out with these AirTag devices a while ago now, and I've really enjoyed all of the news stories to do with them. Often people use them to find their luggage. You're on an airplane, you put an AirTag in your luggage, the airline says, hey, we lost your luggage, we don't know where it is. And you can say, hey, I know where it is, because you can track it on your phone.
Why don't airlines... they mass produce tags that put them on your baggage. Wouldn't that solve their logistics problems? Wouldn't it save them money in the long run with all the person hours going into that?
They could have their own AirTags on them. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think technology's got to be coming to that, make it cheap enough to put on a piece of cardboard or something that they can strap on your luggage. Anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, so, but this story is about a Houston resident who was suspicious of the city's all plastic accepted recycling program and used AirTags to discover where the plastic waste actually ended up. So Houston's program boasted of being able to accept even types of plastic that aren't normally considered recyclable. So this Houston resident, she put AirTags into a few different bags of recycling that she had, and of the bags she tracked, nearly all of them went to a company called Right Waste Management, located nearby in Harris County. The company is not approved to store plastic waste and has failed 3 fire inspections. So this is a big stockpile of plastic. Aerial footage showed that the facility had large piles of plastic waste as high as 10 feet high. So the city says they've collected about 250 tons of plastic since the end of 2022 when this program started, and revealed that none of it had been recycled as of yet. We're stockpiling it for now, he admitted. We're going to see what happens. So, in fairness to the city of Houston, they may someday actually recycle all of this plastic, but it's really just been accumulating since 2022. Houston, as it turns out, is waiting on a promised sorting facility to open where the stored recycling will be sorted and treated. The company behind that sorting facility is Cyclex, and they've developed a method to create recyclable pellets out of the plastic waste. However, only a fraction of these pellets can be made into new plastic, and apparently most will be melted and turned into fuel that is burned and adds to carbon emissions. So we've talked about plastic recycling on the podcast before. This is not really the way to go. I mean, for one thing, we just have too much of it. Even if you have good intentions to recycle your plastic, it's just not the way to go. Single-use plastic is hopefully on the way out.
Yeah, well, it's going to be tough, but hopefully soon. One thing I didn't mention, Brian, is when I got out of Kananaskis, I needed a charge, and we went through Okotoks, which is a small city south of Calgary, where one of my other brother-in-laws used to live for many years, and so we're quite familiar with it. And for some reason, I didn't see an EV charger on the app, the PlugShare app you use to find EV chargers. And we drove by Petro-Canada, and I said, well, there's two chargers. Let's go there. So we went there, and it was getting late in the day, so my son, of course, demanded A&W, and he went to A&W to get some food, which was part of the Petro-Canada. And so we went there. Well, it charged, and I looked at my app to see how it was doing, my Chevy app, to see what the charge percentage was, and it gave me all these errors: service vehicle soon, battery charging, EV system. And I soiled my pants and ran across the parking lot in 35-degree heat to the charger and unplugged it and turned on the car, and everything was fine and has remained fine since. But I thought, I'm at this really fast charger that's charging faster than it somehow should, or wonky, because there's been stories out there about third-party chargers in the United States sometimes frying a vehicle. But this, I was just scared. Just
yikes.
It was brief, though. It was like 20 seconds, so it was fine.
Yeah. And the Petro-Canada chargers are known for being very unreliable.
That's it. But that's another thing, Brian, that I didn't mention, is that I used them a couple of times, and it worked wonderfully. It worked better than the other ones that weren't Flow. You turn it on in the app, and 10 seconds later, it's going. It's authorized and going. And so I had... as far as starting, that's always the question is, can you start the suckers and do they work? And the two that I tried worked. And of course, there's another thing I didn't mention is I always left a plug-in, an entry in PlugShare. I was a good EV community member. I helped other people, told them what was going on. Please do that if you can, because we're still early days here. It's time for the Lightning Round.
The Lightning Round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy and transportation.
The 2025 Hyundai Ioniq 5 is being shown in prototype form and seems to be like it might be the first non-Tesla to market with the NACS NACS port. That's the Tesla design port, which, by the way, is much smaller, much lighter, much more elegant than what things I was using. I don't think you've ever used one, Brian. You should come see what it's like. I should make you charge my car one day, because it's... Yeah,
I've seen pictures of them, video of them, but this is going to be the new standard for North America. So not just Teslas will soon have the NACS port, but none of them have actually appeared yet. So far, adapters have been how people are using the Tesla network with non-Teslas, but very, very soon, looks like Hyundai might be the first. The cars will actually come with a NACS port, and you won't need an adapter.
And I will need an adapter. I will get one hopefully by the end of the year and be able to use the Tesla network. By the way, Tesla referral program has come to Canada, so we might be talking about that on the show. Because if I can use the Tesla network, I mean, we could split maybe some supercharging miles between us, and I could travel for free.
Yeah.
You could travel for
Nice.
free, and then people could support the show if our listeners buy Teslas. They get $1,000 off, which why wouldn't you do that? Yeah, you almost certainly have to go through a referral program because you don't want to leave $1,000 on the table. And they do expire, and I don't do a lot of traveling, and you do, but maybe we could arrange to split those somehow. I don't know how, but zero carbon power generation was over 40% of global electricity generation for the first time last year. So non-emitting electricity generation reached over 40%, which is really bloody good. Brazil was the cleanest power mix in the G20, and it reached 88% in 2023. So that's good. We're finally getting numbers from last year. China is looking at tariffs on Canadian canola exports in response to our country placing 100% tariffs on EVs. Seen a lot of pushback from our sort of community on that. I think it's a ridiculous mistake, especially since Europe actually looked into it and decided that based on subsidies and everything else, China only had 9%, or BYD, for example, only needed 9% tariffs.
Yeah, and we grow a lot of canola around where we live, and I imagine those canola growers are going to be upset if there's a tariff on going.
Those canola growers, by and large, don't like EVs. Don't think they're a joke for weirdos, and wind power and all that is all a joke to them. From my discussions, China has cut air pollution by 41% in the decade ending at the start of 2023. So that's pretty significant. China has an air pollution problem, as you know. Time for a CS Fast Fact. This is from The Economist. For every life that the heaviest 1% of SUVs and trucks save, there are more than a dozen lives lost in other vehicles. This is called... Does that make sense to you? You look confused.
Yeah, so trucks and EVs are large and heavy, so...
You are protected. So sometimes a life is saved because you drive a big vehicle. However, because everybody's driving big vehicles, people in smaller vehicles are dying 12 times as much. So not good. And you don't want to be in a vehicle-size arms race just to protect your family and destroy the environment. Norway is at 94% of new car sales. Brian, that's EVs are 94%. We're not talking about plug-in hybrids. There's none of that in the mix. Pure battery electric vehicles are at 94% in August, during the month of August in Norway. That is a record. China is now installing wind and solar capacity equivalent to 5 new nuclear reactors every week.
Wow.
Every week. Another CS Fast Fact. Cutting down trees to make toilet tissue represents about 15% of global deforestation. Stop pooping, people. 31.1 million trees are needed each year to keep Americans clean. A lot of that comes from old-growth boreal forests in Canada. And, yeah, don't feel guilty, Brian. You can do it. Just do what you have to do, what nature calls. Colombia EV sales report 240% growth July over July. By the way, the bidet cuts down on toilet paper use. So I don't want to get too nasty, too into it, but... You know, bidets are good. I love bidets. If I had a camper, I would install it in a camper. I mean, I do have a camper. I don't have a camper bathroom. And finally this week, for all the water you'll ever use to wash your... that. Yeah, I mentioned that at the top, but it's still part of our show here. So all the water that you'll ever use to wash your cotton t-shirt over its entire lifetime, it will have taken 50 times as much water to grow that cotton that went into it, which seems crazy. Cotton uses about 2.3% of global arable land and accounts for 60% of all insecticide sales. Boston-based Galley, that's a company which uses technology similar to cell-based meat, something we've talked about extensively on the show, is aiming to drastically reduce cotton's environmental impact. This is from Bloomberg. So ginning, blowing, carding, drawing, roving, spinning, weaving, dyeing, cutting, sewing, ironing, shipping, and trucking, these are all steps that make your t-shirts, Brian. And they're taking the cells from a cotton plant and they add them to a large vat that feeds them sugar. This is, again, with fermentation, like beer, but for making other things. And after they have sufficiently multiplied, The technicians use their genetic understanding of the plant, which has been developed over decades of research, to activate certain genes and deactivate others. The result is the cell transformations. The cell transforms and elongates into cotton fiber. And they're also working on lab-grown cocoa and coffee. This is a ways away, though, I'm afraid. They still have to make those fibers longer, and it could take another 10 years. Gailey still needs to improve on the strand length, and that is going to take money as well. So more investment is needed. The plant cells only need sugar to multiply rather than a complex growth material that they use for meat in this sort of area. And given that people aren't going to be eating the cotton, mostly, the company uses reactors that don't have to adhere to as high as hygiene standards as when you're making meat, so it's maybe easier and cheaper in the long run. And they say that Gailey's cotton today is at the same point that lab-grown meat was in 2013, so maybe we will see it on the market. It'll be expensive at first, as lab-grown meat was, but maybe it'll become a common thing, and the world will be a better place for it.
Precision fermentation has lots to bring us. All right, that's our show for this week. Please take the time to contact us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Around social media, we're Clean Energy Pod. And you can find videos of the show on TikTok and YouTube, including special content not always featured on the podcast.
The video version of our podcast is released on the weekend following the audio version. Personally, I prefer the audio version, but that's me. But you can watch it on video. And, you know, there's lots of different places you can watch it now. I think we might even be on Instagram one of these days. But YouTube and TikTok for sure. The Clean Energy Show store is linked in your show notes. Hats and T-shirts made of cotton that use a lot of water. Mugs, I'm not so sure. You rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you please do that for us. If you're new to the show, remember to subscribe because we're out here every week, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.
The Clean Energy Show.